So, we thought we'll bring someone on, two individuals who perhaps are on this mission to ensure that people do take their health more seriously and online misinformation keeps just there. It stays online, does not penetrate our lives as well. Joining us now is Sudipta Sengupta. He's the founder and CEO of the Healthy Indian Project, and Dr. Lancelot Pinto as well, consultant pulmonologist and epidemiologist at Hinduja Hospital. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Dr. Pinto, let me begin with you. There are so many issues around health that India faces, abuse of antibiotics and so much and so more. I can just keep going on. But when it comes to stuff that can be handled, when it comes to stuff which is misinformation online, do you have a way perhaps to tell us how to discriminate? Because when we look at this story, and if I were to talk to it about with my mothers and my aunts, they would say, "Dekho kitna acha WhatsApp post hai, kitni achhi advice di hai." So, and somewhere where our doctors lack sometimes, they're not able to simplify things because they're focused on medicine, not wellness, which is where the gap really is. So how do you sort it out? Suppose you had to explain this to my mother, for example, what would you tell her?
Good morning, Sonal and Toya, and thank you for inviting me to the show. I think misinformation often thrives in areas where fear is high, for example, cancer, or where there is a lot of stigma, for example, erectile dysfunction, or if you're talking about a disease like HIV, AIDS, or when treatments are very complex and doctors find it difficult for themselves to explain things to patients. So these are generally the situations in which medical misinformation thrives, because the patients get a sense of helplessness, they get a sense of not understanding what's happening, and therefore the alternative quick fixes seem very attractive. So in terms of a cheat sheet, I think, I was just thinking about this, and, there are four simple things that you can ask, right? Number one, who? So the four the mantra is who, why, how, and what, right? So who is saying or who is making the claim? What are the credentials of the person making the claim? This is especially true for influencers who have a financial interest or a vested interest in selling something, right? So the alternative cures, which are very expensive, which say, we'll give you a quick fix. It's very important to check the credentials of the person. And very often when you look at the credentials on their website or you look at the details, it will give you a lot of testimonials. They'll say the person has been working in the field for the past 10 years, but it will not really tell you whether the person is qualified to do it. So that's the who part of it. The second question you need to ask yourself is, why is the person saying what they are saying? Are there any incentives? Is it just clickbait? Are they trying to get followers? Are they trying to get a viral video online? What is the incentive for the person doing it? The third question is, how is it being disseminated, right? Unfortunately, studies have shown that more the science in a video, the less attractive it is to the audience, the less the number of clicks, the less the number of followers.
That's surprising, yeah.
And that again tells us that in some way it's a lacunae of experts, that we have not become as good communicators as we should be. And the fourth question you need to ask is what exactly is being said and what does one have to lose? So for example, if someone tells you use a particular hair oil and it's great for your hair, the stakes are not that high. So, but when someone's talking about cancer, you might have just one opportunity to get it right. And therefore your index of suspicion should be a lot higher. Yeah. Your threshold to accept something that sounds sensational, that's coming from a source that's not necessarily legitimate, you need to have a lot more skepticism when the stakes are higher. So I think this is the four broad framework. Who is saying what is being said? Why is the person saying it? How is it being said? More sensational, less likely to be true. And what exactly is being said?
Who, why, how, and what? I just want to repeat that once again for our audiences. Okay, let's go over to Sudipta now to ask him a little bit about building the Healthy Indian Project. Because Sudipta, in many ways, the Healthy Indian Project is one answer to this entire problem. On Instagram, you're posting fact corrections constantly, a rumor that's being spread and what the correct approach is. You also on WhatsApp have a chatbot called Raksha, where people can sort of send any kind of rumor that they've heard and, you will tell them what the right thing is. On Facebook also, I believe Facebook is actually working with you guys to get the right information out when it comes to medical health advice. What's the story? Why did you build THIP? What did you think was the need? And how have you gone about creating an organization that claims to be unbiased? Because bias is a very, very big problem in this entire sector.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. This is a topic that is very close to my heart. We started just before pre-COVID, when after working in the media industry for long, after handling content, I realized there's a certain amount of gullibility with which we produce and consume health content. By that I mean, so if I give you an example, if you need a financial advice, you will probably look at a financial expert, or you will want a financial expert to write a column for you or draft that advice for you. But when it comes to health advice, we probably will believe everybody and anybody. And also, we believe that anybody can write a health content. I'm talking from the media side of it. And I had been guilty of the same. What happened in middle is I faced an unfortunate incident where I saw a very close friend go through misinformation, health misinformation, and had a fallout. And I realized there is a gap, like Dr. Pinto was saying. I mean, misinformation thrives probably when the stakes are higher. I rather sense that misinformation thrives when there is a lack of information. And the lack of information can be about anything. I mean, it can be about a very simple thing for a young girl going through puberty on how to cure pimples. And we have so many misinformation out there which asks you to put on Colgate to Vicks Vapor Up to everything on your pimples. Now, apparently, those are not consequential, though the stakes are not high. But we don't know. The biggest problem that we see with health misinformation is a very little of its effect is measurable. And because the effect is not measurable, hence defining the problem itself becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
So that's exactly where we thought we will start something which will educate people on the right information. We generally do not work with content writers or journalists. We have doctors on our team and doctors outside, external panel of doctors who's constantly helping us create the content. While creating credible information, we've realized that it cannot happen without fact-checking misinformation, because there's so much of it that needs to be tackled. Hence, we got into fact-checking, and as you said, I mean, yes, we are working with companies like Meta and Google, helping them weed out misinformation from the internet.
Yeah. Dr. Pinto, you know, we spoke so much during the time of the pandemic as well, and similar situation is what we had tackled back then. How do you ensure that a papad is not curing cancer? How do you ensure that one particular, drinking cow urine is not going to cure, COVID? And all this, it's been there in the system for a while. And I don't want to blame it only on the celebrities as well, because they only know so much. They have a responsibility towards their followers. But would you say the responsibility is largely with the viewer? It's buyer beware kind of a philosophy. We need to know what we are consuming, right?
So unfortunately, in medicine, the gap, what we call the knowledge asymmetry between the person buying and the person selling, is so large that misinformation fills in the gaps, right? Misinformation fills in the blanks which exist. So I think it's very difficult to, it may not be appropriate to expect a naive, not necessarily educated in the field layperson to update themselves on the knowledge that's there, which is why I think there is a certain responsibility that all of us in the healthcare industry, whether it's doctors, whether it's the media, to kind of bridge that gap in a more rational and sensible way. There's a concept called pre-bunking or persuasion, right? So before misinformation enters the field, it's our job to flood the field with real information, so that misinformation has then to compete with us rather than us trying to firefight once the misinformation is out there.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to medicines and medical care, one of the simple rules that I tell all my patients is, go to a country that has socialized medicine where the taxpayer pays for medicines and see if it's being used, a particular drug is being used in that country, right? So that's a useful. So for example, there are nice guidelines for the UK, which tell you what drugs are approved after a very stringent set of criteria, because, at the end of the day, it's the taxpayer money. So they have to make sure that the drug fits all the right categories before it's rolled out. So if it's used in a country like that, chances are that the drug has a decent amount of information behind it. Unfortunately, in India, as we saw in COVID, a lot of drugs were used in our country which were not used anywhere else in the world, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Can I ask Sudipta? Sudipta, there's a tricky aspect to this, which is Ayurveda, Sattvic living. You'll often have celebrities and health influencers talk about these things, and it's not as if they don't hold great value and great meaning for millions and millions of us. But for example, in the case of Navjot Singh Sidhu, where he came out and said that doing certain protocols had really helped him, and he didn't talk about the actual medicine, the chemotherapy that he'd also had to do at the same time. In situations like that, what do you think is needed? Because that's a story that we see crop up in different forms every few months in India.
Very honestly, Ayurveda had been into the Indian medicine system for ages now. It's a recent phenomena that we are made to believe that Ayurveda and modern medicine do not agree with each other. In our course of work, while working, and we work with, because Indian medicinal system allows multidisciplinary medicine to be practiced, we work with medicinal experts from all fields. And in our course of work, we realized more often than not, the alternative medicines do agree with the modern medicine and vice versa. However, the general perception is if you believe in one, you are anti the other. That is point number one. The point number two is, what actually is Ayurveda needs to be understood. Today, what happened is we are taking up home remedies, we are taking up anything that is herbal and tagging it with Ayurveda. Even in case of Mr. Sidhu, the term Ayurveda had been used as a replacement of a herbal concoction that he was suggesting, which probably was a diet plan, which probably was an intermittent fasting plan. Ayurveda per se, as far as I know, and I'm not a Ayurveda Vaidya here, but as far as we know, that Ayurveda per se do not give the remedy of cancer in the way Mr. Sidhu explained. Modern Ayurveda practitioners actually say that they can complement the chemotherapy and probably help you not have the severe side effects that a chemotherapy treatment has. But what we usually consume is one part of what is being said, take it to an extremity and take it as an opposition to the other medicinal discipline. Now that is what needs to be understood. This is where a lot of health literacy campaign needs to happen, a lot of education needs to be imparted, a lot of awareness needs to be spread on what actual Ayurveda is.
Right.
Because today, the influencers, unfortunately, a lot of influencers that we see around are influencers who claim to be Ayurveda experts with little to no understanding of what actual Ayurveda is. They probably haven't even read the literature or have done a particular Ayurveda course to call themselves experts.
Right.
But the home remedies are repackaged and presented as Ayurveda.
Yeah, but let me go back to the point that Dr. Pinto was also making. There is a massive health literacy gap that you have between people who have the knowledge and people who actually need the knowledge as well. And then there are people who want to impart knowledge. For example, Dr. Pinto, if somebody like me who's very passionate about health and wellness wants to give out something, are you saying I should go get a doctor's degree and only then I should be allowed to speak about it? We have a problem of not having enough doctors, not in India, world over. That's a crisis. Doctors are expected more and more to concentrate and put their energy in research, in more technical things. So how will this gap be filled? Information gap, which will keep people away from the hospitals, not just give them cures.
So without naming any people in specific, I think there are enough examples of celebrities getting on board really good causes when it comes to medicine, right? Whether it's vaccinations, whether it's preemptively doing things which are good for your health. But unfortunately, there are also examples of influencers, selling things which are not necessarily good for your health, right? So I think nobody expects everyone to be a doctor, of course not. But I think it's useful to get the knowledge on board and then disseminate it in a way that's useful. So I was reading something called it's called media literacy with related to illusory truth effect. So apparently, even something that's pseudoscience, even something that's misinformation, if it's repeated often enough in the media, people tend to believe it, right? So even the way you communicate that has to be such that the misinformation takes up 10 seconds and the information takes up about a minute after that, right? So there's a science even to dissemination or debunking of misinformation. So I think all of us need to use our skill sets. So the experts get on board and help the influencers, help the media disseminate the right kind of information, and the media themselves have a way to filter out, what is misinformation versus information. So I think all of us have a role to play in it, and I don't think this should be in the domain of doctors alone. In fact, very often, doctors are viewed as people who might have conflicts of interest as well. So maybe the doctors are not the most reliable people. So influencers are great as long as they get the right information on board.
You've talked about that, and I want to touch on that with the Healthy Indian Project too. The unbiasedness, how important that is, because a lot of these platforms, a lot of the times when doctors are coming out too, they have partnerships with medicines, with certain companies. The Healthy Indian Project, you guys have gone quite far to make sure that you are unbiased. At least you talk a little bit about this in some interviews. Can you tell us about how we as consumers can figure out if a platform is biased or not? Because this is often all behind the curtains.
See, there are certain signals to figuring out whether you are reading the right information or you are falling prey to misinformation. Like Dr. Pinto also mentioned. Look at the source, look at what is being told to you with what objective. If the particular website is trying to sell you a particular product and giving you information around that, it's a red signal to start with. If they are promoting an extremity, and by extremity I mean if they are promoting a certain medicinal bias, then once again that's a red signal. If you don't find enough research, and by research I do not make stuffing in medicinal research to make it boring, but there can be links that take you to a certain research page. If you don't see these kind of signals, once again, who the writer is, who's writing the article, if you see that the author information is not being given properly, then once again that is a red flag. If you have not seen any certification on the website per se, for example, the Healthy Indian Project goes miles to gain certification. We are certified by the International Fact Checking Network. We are certified by the AKI. These certifications takes a lot of effort to get, and the reason we go through these rigorous processes is because we also want to ensure that our content stays unbiased. And like I said, at the end of the day, go back and ask your doctor. Yes, you may not trust your doctor 100%, but he at the end of the day can point you to the right information. Do not just do a Google search, read everything, and then think that you know better than your doctor.
That's right. So the next time you get dengue and somebody asks you to have papite ka patta, it's great. It might have worked for some people, but please ask your doctor. Let them take a call on what is to be done. It does more harm sometimes than good. So clearly that's the bottom line here. Thank you both for joining us with this. And we really hope there are no clear answers here, to be honest about this.